Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's jump right in. Today, we're tackling a really big question, one that comes from a pretty powerful report. What if your constitutional rights, the ones you think you have, only exist on paper? What if they have zero connection to your actual everyday life?
So, to really get this, let's start with a story. It's about a second grader in Cleveland, Ohio. On a Tuesday, she walks into her classroom and no permanent teacher. By Friday, her family's moving out. They got an eviction notice. Just like that, her reading help gets canceled. Her records get lost in the shuffle as she's forced to change schools. You can see how it just snowballs, right? Every single one of those steps is a breakdown in a system that's supposed to be there for her.
Now, you might just think, wow, that's a tragedy. And it is. But what if it's not just a sad story? What if it's the totally predictable result of how our systems are actually designed to work? Not a bug, but a feature. And that's the real question we have to ask. Are these systems just accidentally failing, or are they failing by design? Okay, so this brings us to the first big idea. Think about it like this. You have a right on paper, your legal identity, which includes your right to an education, your right to housing. It's all written down right there in the law books. But what happens when that legal identity, that piece of paper, completely fails to connect with your real life? So, in theory, that little girl from Cleveland is protected. The law says she has a right to a free, appropriate public education. But for so many people, these rights are kind of like phantom limbs. They're supposed to be there. You can feel where they should be, but they just don't work. It's like they've been, administratively amputated. All right, so this huge disconnect, it actually has a name. It's called the execution gap. And this isn't just some vague feeling that the system let you down. No, it's a way to actually measure the giant chasm between what the law promises you and what the government actually delivers. So what is the execution gap, really? It's the quantifiable, measurable difference between what you are legally owed, say special education services or a lawyer, and whether you actually get it. It's a way to take what feels like a moral problem and turn it into a math problem. You can literally calculate the failure. And just look at how this plays out in real life. The law says kids get special ed services within 60 days. The reality in Cleveland? 38% of them wait longer. The Constitution guarantees you a lawyer. The reality? Over half of the youth in juvenile court wait more than 24 hours to even see one. And that right to lead-free housing? Well, that doesn't mean a whole lot when 88% of the identified lead pipes are still in service right now. So when you average it all out across 5 crucial areas, everything from education to housing, Cleveland has an execution gap of a whopping 42%. Let that sink in. That means that almost half the time, the basic rights and services that are legally owed to people are just not being delivered, period. So the big question is, why? Why is this happening? Well, here's the most provocative claim in the whole report. It's not an accident. The idea is that the systems themselves are actually structured to make certain people invisible. They're designed to filter people out using things like budget cuts, endless red tape, and even algorithms. And there's a whole history here. You go back a few decades, and a person's standing, their visibility, was often tied to having a stable industrial job. Think union jobs. But then, deindustrialization happens. Those jobs vanish. And the tax base that funded all the public services, it evaporates. And what do we get instead? These incredibly complex, chronically underfunded systems where your rights now hinge on your ability to navigate this maze of paperwork and algorithms. And a lot of the time, these systems seem designed to screen you out, not help you in. And you can see exactly how this design plays out. Look at this. A teacher in a Cleveland City school makes about 53 grand, but a teacher just one suburb over in Shaker Heights, over 72 grand. That's a nearly $20,000 difference. That's not random. That's a direct result of how we structure school funding. And what's the consequence? Well, you get massive teacher turnover in the city schools and a huge, huge execution gap in education for those kids. Okay, so if the system really is designed to fail, then what in the world do you do about it? Well, this is where things get really interesting. The report doesn't just point out the problem. It actually proposes a brand new legal tool to fight back, a way to hold the government accountable, not just for what it does, but for what it systematically fails to do. It's called Constructive Denial of Personhood. Let's call it CDP for short. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It says that when a government's failure to deliver a right is persistent, predictable, and measurable, when they know it's happening, then that failure isn't just an oops. It's the same thing as actively denying your rights. The failure to act becomes the illegal act.
And this isn't just some abstract idea. They lay out a roadmap for how you could actually make this claim in court. You'd have to prove 4 things. First, the government has a clear legal duty to provide a service. Got it? Second, there's a foreseeable, measurable pattern of them not doing it. Third, that failure pretty much makes the right meaningless in real life. And finally, number 4, the reason for the failure is baked right into the system itself, its budget, its priorities, its very design.
So when you put it all together, the execution gap, this idea of CDP, it's really all about one thing. It's about closing that huge gap between the promise and the reality. It's about making our institutions finally see the people they are legally supposed to be serving. There's this one line in the report that just hits you. The law exists, the person does not. Think about that. When a kid is legally entitled to lead-free water, but they're still drinking from lead pipes every single day, sure, the law exists. But for that child, their legal personhood, their very status as someone who has rights, has been completely erased. And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? It forces us, and you, to think about what a right even is. Is it just an abstract idea, something written down in an old document? Or is it a real, tangible thing that has to actually be delivered to have any meaning at all? Because how we answer that, well, that decides whether our Constitution is a living promise or if it's just words on a page.